Hi, so this is my first read through of Chris's personal statement. I'm going to walk over it and then add comments as I see fit and hopefully explain them more so that you get a sense of how to do better. All right, here we go. My mother crouched over in anguish with tears rolling down her face as she held the phone to her ear. I don't think you need a comma there. These tears were for my father, who had passed away from complications related to Parkinson's disease. When I realized it was my dad who had died, no need to capitalize that, it felt like a blow to the chest. I began to have flashbacks of all the cherishable moments I had with him. Actually, I know this is weird, but it's actually I had with him. That is correct. Nobody knows why. All the laughs we shared and the stories he told replayed themselves in my head. Again, no need for a comma there. Within a moment's notice, and now actually, comma there. It's like within a moment's notice, I was on my knees. Whenever there's sort of a natural pause, but the real reason behind it is because when you start with something like within or in, it's a prepositional phrase describing another part of the sentence. But anyway, just go where there's naturally a pause. I was on my knees sobbing like I never have before. He was my first true loss. One time when I was a little boy, I wanted to go to an annual movie night at my school. My dad didn't feel well that day, but he agreed to go with me anyway. We didn't even make it to the next street before he had to stop to take a breather. I watched as he stood there on the sidewalk, leaning on his cane for support. That's when he told me he couldn't make it. He had a genuine look of concern on his face, the kind of expression adults give you when they know they failed you. At the time, I didn't understand why my dad was unable to walk 3 blocks to take me to school. It wasn't until after my dad passed away that I began to look back at my life and appreciate every single thing he did for me. From that moment forward, I decided that I'm going to do everything in my power to make him and my family proud. As his only son, I feel I am a representation of him. And in the short time I've spent with him, he actually, so whenever you see a semicolon here, that's just connecting two independent sentences. And in the short time I've spent with him, again, no need for a comma there, he was a great role model who demonstrated the value of perseverance and rising above the obstacles that we face in life. Whenever I said something clever or got a good grade on my report card, my dad would always say, "Tu eres un tigre." Oh man, I'm so white. I was reminded of my dad during a final assignment for my dual enrollment communications class at Bronx Community College, where I had to give an oral speech. My professor allowed each student 3 minutes to prepare outside of the classroom before we had to walk inside to present. My nerves had me shaking, but I was able to relive my fear of public speaking by thinking of what my dad would have said. "Tu eres un tigre?" I don't know. I'm sorry. I walked into the classroom with a confident stride, and I delivered a passionate speech that earned me an A plus. Whenever I am met with a challenge, I remember that my dad believed in me. I am determined to defy the odds and become a first-generation college student. My goal is to study political science and use my knowledge to become a change agent in society, improving the lives of the underserved. Yeah. Disadvantages, such as losing a family member or coming from a tough neighborhood, do not have to hold you back, but instead could be used to push you forward. Hi, so I'm back. I took a brief moment to go through and comment on Chris's personal statement with some feedback on how to strengthen it. But in general, I think there are 4 things that Chris needs to do to make his personal statement stronger and stand out more. And I think that these are things that I see happen a lot, but they're always unique to each student's story and how they're writing it. So the first thing that you always want to look out for when you're writing an essay is that the ideas in one paragraph flow naturally to the ideas in the next. So, and this is done through what's called transition sentences. They can either be the topic sentence of a new paragraph or the concluding sentence of the previous paragraph. And it basically just sort of prepares the reader for what is about to happen next and how it relates to what the reader has just read. Another thing that I really like about Chris is that he has a combination of showing through stories such as his father like not being able to take him to school, or the saying and the phrase that his father told him that he now uses to keep going in hard times. But I think we can do even more showing. So what I want Chris to do is work on condensing and refining a lot of the telling to make room for more showing. The story is there, but it needs more refining. And this is only because sections like this first paragraph here are really wordy. Like let's read it and sort of I'll walk you through it. So it wasn't until after my dad passed away that I began to look at my life and appreciate every single thing he did for me. From that moment forward, I decided that I'm going to do everything in my power to make him and my family proud. As his only son, I feel that I'm a representation of him. And in the short time I've spent with him, he was a great role model who demonstrated the value of perseverance and rising above the obstacles we face in life. So that is one, pretty well written. It's could be a good concluding paragraph, hint, hint. But I think that all of the things that Chris says in this essay, or in this paragraph, as it were, can be condensed and really demonstrated through Chris really exploring that phrase, tu eres un tigre. I'm sorry. I'm gonna go download Duolingo. I'm trying to get better at pronunciation. But anyway, like his saying in English means you are a tiger. So this "you are a tiger" phrase, I think, can be used to show, one, the positive impact and role model that Chris's dad was, and two, how Chris has taken that and become like his own very hardworking person. So that's another example of like, these sentences are important, but they can be done more succinctly. For instance, like, I'm his only son. From that moment forward, everything he did for me. All of those are very similar ideas, which means that they can probably be condensed into just one sentence. Moving on to the rest of the comments. And this is, by the way, condensing sentences and refining it is the tedious part of editing an essay, but it's also why it's the most important, because you may have like the most beautiful ideas written in your essay, but if they're not written in a way that your audience understands them, they get lost, which we don't want that, right? So, and then my third advice is something I've already sort of touched on, is bring out the "you are a tiger" story and mention it in the very first paragraph. Because even though this is a personal statement, it's a lot like the standard 5-paragraph essay, where you, in your first paragraph, you introduce everything that you'll be talking about. And then in the last sentence of your first paragraph, you give the main takeaway or the thesis statement. So in the last sentence of this paragraph, or it could also be in the first sentence of the next paragraph, bring in and introduce the concept of how Chris's dad influenced him to be this to be a tiger, right? And that way the reader's like, okay, like his father tragically died, but he left him with this nugget. Okay, I see where this is going. And then the reader follows it a little bit easier and is more invested in your story. And that is basically it for Chris. As you can see, I've like commented here about condensing and all of that. But what you really want to focus on is showing and not telling. And you show through anecdotes or specific stories that are indicative of a larger whole. And by showing, not telling, you also appeal not just to the logos or logic and intellect of the reader, you also appeal to the pathos or the emotions of the reader, which is always like good to hit on. And one last thing is, this last paragraph, while awesome, feels like sort of an abrupt departure from the tone of the rest of his essay. And that's something that like you also catch in the revision process. But I want it to feel less abrupt once we get to this paragraph. And one way of making it feel less abrupt is by mentioning like what a tiger is and how that influenced your Chris's thought process, who's going to defy the odds and become a first generation college graduate. So anyway, I hope this was helpful for you, and I will see you later.